Mic check. 1, 2. Are we recording? Hi, I'm Michelle Bernstein, an award-winning chef, restaurateur, and mom. I have a lot on my plate, including my psoriatic arthritis symptoms. That's why I was prescribed Cosentyx. It helps me move better.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for people 2 years of age and older with active psoriatic arthritis. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some were fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTYX or Cosentyx.com.
Ask your rheumatologist about Cosentyx.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show. This is our post-election 2024 first broadcast. With me is Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the chair of the Suffolk County Republican Party and the vice chair of the New York State Republican Party. And joining us is our good friend, noted attorney, commentator, essayist, Eric Levine. My congratulations to Jesse for a very fine outing out in Suffolk County and throughout the state of New York. My congratulations to Eric, who was deeply involved in campaigns across the country and supporting United States candidates for the Senate, Republican candidates. It was very successful. And congratulations for me for hanging out with you two gentlemen and helping a little bit. So the first question is, why the presidential election, who won and who lost and why? I want to share the following with you, courtesy of Patty Chayefsky, the movie Network, which won 4 Academy Awards, and Peter Finch, the actor.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!
To me, gentlemen, that pretty much sums it up. And we have a long show to discuss the substantive issues and the political strategies. But let me just tell you, I think that really captures the essence of what happened here. This, in my view, and then I'll turn it over first to Eric and then to Chairman Garcia. This is my view about, and it's not an exclusive list, but the things that mattered and why the results came out the way they did. Obviously, if you're listening, you know that President Trump is the president-elect. You know that the Senate will be at least 52 to 48 in the hands of the Republican majority. Hopefully, when all the votes are counted, and there's still 18 to 20 seats out there across the country, the Republicans will hold on to the House of Representatives. We can discuss later on why that's so important. But these are my quick, down and dirty reasons why I believe the Republicans did have a red wave this year, and President Trump is going back into the Oval Office. Number one, I think this was a repudiation of Democratic policies. Number two, I think people were angered by the attacks and the lawfare against Donald Trump, the weaponization of the prosecutorial function, the judicial function, and the media against Trump. I think people realized that there was a coup against Biden, and it was an undemocratic nomination of Harris, and the party bosses in the Democratic Party just pushed it through. And lastly, and equally as important, people realized when Harris was out there, to the extent that she was out there in any limited fashion, that she was totally unqualified in terms of ability, experience, or integrity for doing this job. So those are my big four, Jesse and Eric. Eric, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think the biggest winner, of course, is Donald Trump. What an extraordinary political comeback. I mean, I know he likes to speak in superlatives, but this may actually be the biggest political comeback in American history.
As he would say, Jesse and Eric, it's huge.
Yeah, hugely big. Yeah, so in this circumstance, he may actually be exaggerating. It may actually be true. So he's the biggest winner. Who are the biggest losers? Now, of course, on the face of it, Kamala Harris is the biggest loser. She was the candidate and she lost. But truth of the matter is, she was an empty vessel into which Obama and the other progressives were just pouring the radical left's agenda into. And she wasn't really intelligent enough or capable enough to be able to navigate the progressive agenda in a way that would be appealable to the American people. And the American voters, the American electorate, in response, I mean, apropos your opening quote from Network, we're mad as hell, we're not going to take it anymore. The American people were sick and tired of being told, shut up. If you disagree with us, you're a racist, you're a misogynist, you're a xenophobe, you're a bigot. Only if you agree with us are you wise.
You're a fascist.
You're a
Nazi,
fascist. You're
Nazi.
You're a semi-Nazi. You're a semi-fascist. You're garbage. Because there's no other rational basis on which you can disagree with us. How dare you worry about inflation when transgender women need to be able to participate, or who are biological men, be able to participate in sports? How dare you worry about your tax rate when we have, when we have to teach social justice? Or how dare you worry about a national security when people are, taking to the streets and calling for the extermination of the Jews? The American public is just fed up with wokeism. To me, that is the biggest loser. The social justice movement is on its heels. Hopefully, it will be completely crushed by a Trump administration, because it's inherently racist and anti-Semitic and unconstitutional. But the American people stood up and said, we are not going to take this extremism anymore. Look, is there racism in the United States? Yes. Is there anti-Semitism in the United States? Yes. Are there bigots? Are there misogynists? Yes. But they remain the extreme. The overwhelming majority of the American people are good, honest, decent, intelligent, God-fearing patriots. And they were being sick and tired of being told that if you don't agree with us, you're one of these deplorables. And that was what the reaction was too. So in many ways, I think the biggest loser is social justice and DEI. As individuals, the biggest losers, Barack Obama. Because Obama is really the one that set us down this path of the social justice. It existed, but he really put it into hyperdrive and mainstreamed it. This is a rejection in many ways of Obamaism. It's a rejection of appeasement. The world is on fire. The world is on fire. The catastrophic surrender in Afghanistan, the Russian invasion of the Ukraine, the appeasement of Iran, the October 7th attack, the hostilities and the aggression that China is showing in the Indo-Pacific, all because of appeasement and all because of a weak and feckless foreign policy. Americans do believe that America is an exceptional country, and they believe in American exceptionalism as defined by the United States, and the American-led world order is what keeps the peace. And without the United States, there is no world order and there is no peace. When Obama became president, one of the first things he said when he was asked, do you believe in American exceptionalism, was to say, yeah, I believe in American exceptionalism like the Greeks believe in Greek exceptionalism and the British believe in British exceptionalism, meaning that the United States is just like any other country. That's nonsense. The United States is not like any other country. It is the unique country in the world, and the American people stood up and said, we believe that. But I will take the greatest glee in saying that one of the huge losers was Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer, as anti-Semitism was exploding across the country on our college campuses and in our cities, he went into the witness protection program. When Israel was attacked on October 7th, what was his response? Israel should have new elections and Benjamin Netanyahu should be removed. He is an embarrassment. Anyone that morally compromised has no right to be leading the most important legislative body in the world, and that's the United States Senate. And thank God the guy was humiliated and kicked to the side, hopefully never to be leader again. So that's who I think are the biggest winners and the biggest losers.
Jesse, you were on the ground. You were helping organizing throughout the state of New York and out on Long Island the campaigns. And as you were looking at this, both as you were going through it and reflection after it's over, who do you think the big winners and losers were?
Well, honestly, I do agree that the biggest winner here is Donald Trump personally as an individual. As a group, the biggest winners are the middle-class Americans in general, New Yorkers in general. I believe that this is a repudiation of the socialist policies. It's also a rejection. It is a national referendum, which basically said no to wokeism and to extreme DEI, and basically an affirmation in returning to our founding fathers, the tenets of our founding fathers, and of course, to common sense. That not everything is offensive, and that it's okay to disagree and move on. You know, I think I saw some language somewhere. You know, if I see something on social media that I don't agree with, I just move on to the next thing. I don't have to sit there and, you know, get into a fight about every issue, whether it's if instead of but. But I do believe that this is a rejection of wokeism, a rejection of progressive policies, a rejection of the Democratic platform that moved forward, certainly a rejection of the Obama, Biden, Harris policy platform, and a return to our true roots as a nation. So I'm heartened by that as we go forward. And I am glad that, to coin a phrase, that it was too big to rig. Because in doing so, I think by the time that this airs, I believe that Donald Trump will be north of 300 electoral votes. 270 were needed. I believe he's going to win the popular vote along with the Electoral College. It then issues a sense of confidence back into our electoral system. And I do want to just take a moment, and I rarely use this platform to speak about the Suffolk County Republican Committee, its members, and its volunteers. But to those thousands of members, committee members, and volunteers, I truly want to express my thanks. And the people of Suffolk County want to express their thanks, because these are people from the early days in February in the winter, collecting signatures on petitions, getting our candidates qualified. When they went for whatever dollars they had left in their pockets after paying these inflationary costs at the grocery store and at the pump, you know, they supported our candidates that way. They made millions of phone calls, hit hundreds of thousands of doors. I'm proud that in Suffolk County, Donald Trump achieved, at least unofficially right now, it's going to be north of this, 403,000 votes. Now, that won't turn the Electoral College in New York, but it's going to be close, and we should get into these numbers by states. But what it does help his popular vote count. And that 403,000 votes is a record for any presidential candidate to have ever received out of Suffolk County. And in Suffolk County, for the first time since its inception, Republicans outpaced Democrats in early voting by more than 15,000. That just demonstrates that our party, our members, our voters are adaptable. We adapt to new changes, despite the fact that progressive Democrats weaponize the electoral system and manipulate it to the point to benefit themselves and their candidates, because at the ballot boxes, we've seen their policies are being rejected. The other big loser in this result is the legacy media. The legacy mainstream media has got egg on its face. The way they tried to manipulate polling numbers, the way they went after Donald Trump, amplifying the messaging from the Democrats, him being a fascist, him being the second coming of Hitler, that we are going to be losing our republic, that he's a threat to democracy. All of that language, the people of America and New York, and we need to talk about New York, that had a 14-point swing from 2020 to 2024 in the presidential election towards the Republican, towards Donald Trump. They are the biggest losers, because the American people have already said in polling and in surveys that the only people trusted less than the Congress as a whole is the legacy media. And now it's even coming to fruit with this election. The people of America, middle-class voters and families, they saw through the vitriol, the manipulation, and basically the brainwashing that the mainstream media and the elites wanted to undertake, so that they could put their thumb on this ballot, on this election.
Well, gentlemen, let me quote two presidents, one of whom I have the greatest respect for and one who I have substantially less respect for. Respect for the office, but not for the individual. The one, and I guess Eric calls me, I'm a Reagan Democrat. I'm a common sense Democrat. I'm a centrist Democrat. So I want to call.
No, I think you're the most. I don't know. I don't know what the label is, but you're the most conservative person on these
on this call. Well, let me just say, Ronald Reagan was my hero, and when Ronald Reagan said to the American people in a debate, "Are you better off today than you were 4 years ago?" that really set the stage for his electoral victory. I think the same question was in everybody's mind during this election campaign, Jesse and Eric. The real question is, were we better off under Trump in his 4 years on all levels of policy, domestic and foreign? And where were we going to be, as Eric has corrected me over the months, where were we going to be in the next 4 years if we continue the same policies? And when Kamala Harris famously said, she was asked the question, what would she change and how would she be different? She said she wouldn't change anything.
But she couldn't think of anything.
She couldn't think of anything. She said, I'm going to be the agent of change, but she couldn't tell you what that was going to be. Then the other famous line from Barack Obama, and I respectfully submit this Biden-Harris term was really a third term for Obama. Clearly. He was really controlling it. And if Harris had won, it would have been a fourth term from Obama. And Obamaism, I agree with Jesse and Eric, has been repudiated the same way the media has been repudiated. But Obama famously said, elections have consequences. I think the biggest consequence, I submit to you, gentlemen, is it has been one, repudiation of media, as Jesse points out. Two, a repudiation of the woke policies, as Eric and Jesse have pointed out. But to me, I see the beginning of the realignment of the two major parties in this country. I think this is a historical realignment. Decades ago, there was a book called The Emerging Republican Majority, written by a fellow named Kevin Phillips. And that was an optimistic forecast of what was going to happen. Of course, that didn't happen. But I believe that with the Democratic Party, with its far-left programs, with its elitism of Hollywood and the media, and the rock stars and the music types, I just found it preposterous that she's campaigning with all these celebrities when she's not going in and talking to people. It's Trump who goes behind the counter in McDonald's. It's Trump who goes into the garbage truck after people who supported Trump are called garbage by the sitting president of the United States. And Biden should apologize for that, and he should be ashamed of himself. So I believe those two themes, are you better off and you have better prospects and election have consequences, this repudiation of Obamaism, this repudiation of wokeism, of a tilted political system, of a tilted media system, of the misuse and abuse of the legal system, that has been repudiated. People were mad in hell. They're not going to take it anymore. I want to just say this, and we can continue this discussion because we have to take a hard break in a moment. As we're walking into the studio, Jesse and Eric, last night you have the governor of the state of New York, Hochul, and the attorney general of the state of New York, James. And now you have the governor of the state of California, Newsom. They have now pledged that the resistance will continue, that they will use the power of their offices, their budgets, their staffs to go to war with Donald Trump. He hasn't even been certified by the Congress yet under the process. He hasn't been sworn in yet, and yet they're arming themselves to continue this warfare against Trump policies and his vision. Just as when they were against him when he was coming down the elevator at Trump Tower, they declared perpetual war against Donald Trump and his values. And I say they have declared perpetual war against the common sense Americans who voted the right way and have given us back our country. This is Let the Record Show. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. With me is Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, noted commentator and essayist and attorney Eric Levine. Please stay with us. We'll be back in a moment with more interesting and important conversation.
Let the Record Show is on the air.
Lights, camera, innovation. Walt Disney Studios chose advanced 5G solutions from T-Mobile for Business to transform the movie-making process. Together, we kept a remote production hub in Hawaii in sync with a team in California to bring Lilo and Stitch to theaters this summer. This is picture-perfect collaboration. This is Walt Disney Studios with T-Mobile for Business. Take your business further at T-Mobile.com/now.
Shopping is hard, right? But I found a better way. Stitch Fix online personal styling makes it easy. I just give my stylist my size, style, and budget preferences. I order boxes when I want and how I want. No subscription required. And he sends just for me pieces, plus outfit recommendations and styling tips. I keep what works and send back the rest. It's so easy. Make style easy. Get started today at StitchFix.com/Spotify. That's StitchFix.com/Spotify.
Parents of tweens, if you're familiar with far-off drop-offs...
Dad, stop, right here.
Or get DMs about what's for dinner, you may be experiencing tween milestones. For your son or daughter, these can start at age 9. HPV vaccination, a type of cancer prevention against certain HPV-related cancers, can start then too.
For most, HPV clears on its own. But for those who don't clear the virus, it can cause certain cancers later in life.
Embrace this phase. Help protect them in the next.
Ask their doctor today about HPV vaccination. Brought to you by Merck.
Fellas, you know Degree Cool Rush deodorant, right? Well, last year they changed the formula, and guys were mad about it. One dude even started a petition. So guess what? Degree heard us, admitted they messed up, and brought the original Cool Rush scent back exactly how it was. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So grab some and remember why its cool, crisp, and fresh scent made it the #1 men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory for all of us.
This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
We are back on Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the county chair of the Suffolk County Republican Party and the vice chair of the state Republican Party, coming off of major victories here in New York State. And Jesse, you have to be commended for all the hard work you did, not just on Suffolk and Long Island, but throughout the whole state, because you were deeply involved, and this is the vice chair of the party. I know that. And I just want to say, one of the good news coming out of this election is that if the voting tabulations hold, the Republicans will have stopped the supermajority in the New York State Senate, which may give Hochul a little bit of backbone in fighting against the progressive left led by Gianaris in the state Senate that pushes through all these crazy, radical, woke policies that are destroying the state of New York. But now I turn it back to Eric.
Yeah, one of the great ironies of this election, we were talking a little bit before about this realignment, is for all the calls by Democrats of Republicans being racists and fascists and semi-fascists and whatever other horrible name they came up with, there was a dramatic shift in the Latino vote to Republicans, a dramatic shift by black males to Republicans. I mean, and one of the great what word can we use? I mean, one of the most condescending things I've ever heard in my entire life was Barack Obama telling black males how they should vote and how they should think. And basically saying, how dare you think for yourselves? You're black, and therefore you must, let me open the manual. It says, oh, you must vote Democrat. But there was a huge, Donald Trump got, I think, over 25% of the black male vote. Jews, there are some polls that showed that in New York and Florida, that 45% of Jewish voters voted for Donald Trump. You know, so much for these allegations of anti-Semitism and just general bigotry by the Republicans. Truth of the matter is, it's the progressive left that views everything through the lens of race and gender. They're the bigots. They're really the bigots. And you were talking before about the importance, or you alluded before about the importance of Republicans holding Congress, and then you were also talking about Hochul and Newsom starting the resistance. It's going to have to be at the state level, because what they had done in the first Trump term is when the Democrats controlled the House, what did they do? They impeached Trump. So if the Republicans hold the House, there aren't going to be any impeachments. There aren't going to be any Russia hoaxes. There isn't going to be any lawfare, because it all has to start in the House. Trump is going to be able to govern. So to the extent there's going to be this resistance, it's going to have to come from the states. Truth be told, if Kathy Hochul were really a patriot, if she really wanted to put the country first, she would pardon Trump from this outrageous prosecution by Alvin Bragg. She would just get rid of it. But she won't, because they want to hold it over Trump's head. But that would really show that she puts the country first. But she doesn't. And that's what's unfortunate.
Jesse.
Yeah, number one, as Your Honor, you let in with this coalition now of Newsom in California, Hochul, and Letitia James in New York coming out with this strident type of language. For Newsom, I do believe that this is nothing more than preparing for the next presidential election.
Absolutely.
In 2028. And I have no imperial knowledge of this, but I can put together some of the pieces that are going on here. This alignment between Hochul and Letitia James, I believe, is in preparation of two elections, the mayor of the city of New York and the 2026 gubernatorial election. I know that Letitia James has been in the past talked about a possible candidate for governor. Recently, with Eric Adams' problems, her name has been floated for the mayorship. So I believe that this partnership is maybe going to be designed a bit for how two people can get what they want and succeed in their upcoming elections. But first and foremost, we have to look at New York. Eric touched upon how the coalition that Trump and the gains he made in different groups. We touched upon the Jewish and Black. Hispanics. In 2024, 42% of the Hispanics went for Donald Trump, as opposed to in 2020, when about just under 35% went for Donald Trump. In fact, if you saw even here in New York, and the reason I opened up with Letitia James and Kathy Hochul is that in 2020, Joe Biden won New York by 23 points. In 2024, Kamala Harris won New York by only 11 points at the last unofficial council we've had. And Trump in New York City was reaching at one point Lee Zeldin's numbers. He was topping out at about 30% of the New York City vote. We saw huge gains. In fact, we won a state Senate seat right there in that area.
You won in Brooklyn.
In Brooklyn. And right there we see where this is happening. Even in deep blue New York. In 2022, we saw Lee Zeldin come within 3 points. In 2024, we see Donald Trump. They have demonized him here in New York, and he closed that within 11 points. We saw his impact in some of our congressional races and such. In other races that we lost on the Congress, I believe that there was issues there possibly with the campaigns and maybe the demographics of the district. But even with young people, young men, 18 to 29, and we heard this, and we saw this on the ground, 52% of them went for Donald Trump. We were seeing a break with young men going with Donald Trump. And in 2020, 61% of those young men were going with Joe Biden. Young males were going for Trump and abandoning the Democratic Party. So it's unbelievable. Even with women, Harris was underperforming. She only received 51% of women over 45. She only had a 10-point margin with women between 18 and 44. And the one thing I can say that all this is that America and all our melting pot woke up to the fact that the Democratic policies of the third term of Barack Obama, which is Biden and Harris, and they wanted to continue that with another term with Kamala Harris, that their policies hurt their demographic. They hurt America. They hurt them in the pocketbook when it came to increasing health care costs, increasing car insurance, increasing fuel costs, increase in our home heating fuels, and just going to the grocery store cost you an extra $200.
And don't forget about the mortgages, Jesse.
And the mortgage is going out of control because interest rates
and heating your home or putting gas in your car.
But let me go a little bit broader. I want to get your thoughts on this. Did you gentlemen happen to catch any of Kamala Harris's so-called concession speech yesterday?
I did. I saw the whole thing.
Jesse? Okay. So, Jesse, what were your thoughts about that? Then I'll turn it over to Jesse, his thoughts.
It was basically insulting. It was trying to justify her campaign and the lack of policies, or defend the fight that those individuals that supported her came forward. Kamala Harris and the Democrats, she now represents the failures of the Democratic Party. You know what? Hanging out in the shadows, and people in the Democratic corners are now saying, you know what? You can try and blame Joe Biden for getting out of this race too late. They could have controlled this by bringing a significant primary into the season a year ago, if they knew, and they did know, that there were some issues with his mental capacity. But also what we talked about is Barack Obama. The shine has come off on Barack Obama's and Michelle Obama's. For them and Pelosi undertaking this coup d'etat of the political nomination process, basically to set it up for themselves, I believe, in 2028. Yeah, so I do believe that that's where they went.
Let me just make this comment, then I'll go to Eric. As I listened to that speech, you know what came across my political screen? Kamala Harris for governor of California when Newsom leaves. I think that was the beginning of her campaign to become California governor. That she's going to ride this resistance wave, and that's a viable product and message in the state of California. This woman will not go away, regrettably. She should be as Lenin would say, in the garbage can of history for being a failed public official, but she will not do that. She's going to try to ride the resistance to the governorship of California. Eric.
Yeah, I didn't quite see that. I mean, you may be right. I mean, my view of her after this election was that her political career is finished. I mean, she truly was an empty vessel. To the extent that she came out from hiding, she would often have these word salads. To the extent that she was able to put nouns and verbs and adjectives together and form a sentence, they were vapid. And to the extent she was able to put forward a policy position, they were dopey. I mean, they did, price controls. They failed in the Soviet Union, they failed in Cuba, and they would fail here. So, and she didn't just lose, she was humiliated. She lost, she was humiliated. So I don't really see her as having a viable political career going forward, but, neither did Richard Nixon, neither did Donald Trump. You never know. But I was listening to the speech, but the one thing I never heard her say was to take credit, was to take responsibility for the loss.
Well, that's interesting because, Jesse, and you're a political insider and you understand this. It seemed to me that for the last couple of weeks, the blame game has been heating up, and now it's out in the open. The Atlantic magazine has already done that. Different partisans for Biden have started blaming her. Partisans for Kamala Harris have been blaming Biden. What are your thoughts about this Democratic civil war that's already started?
Mine is go at it. Go at it. More the better. Because here's the thing. Have we ever heard a Democrat take responsibility for their loss, or for responsibility for a failed policy, or responsibility for a policy that they believed in? It just did not work out the way they did. Never. You'll never do that. This is the political pointing game right now. And what it demonstrates is that not just are they in a civil war, it demonstrates that they're in shambles.
Well, the thing I've been hearing that's been so interesting to me, which is why I don't think the Democrats get it at all, is many of the talking heads that I've been listening to, both Democratic elected officials and the media and the other talking heads, they talk about, black men as a perfect example. And Barack Obama himself said it. I think that you guys have problems with a woman. I voted for Donald Trump because I have a problem with a woman. I mean, in 2016, I was a Marco Rubio guy. And just to prove that I was a xenophobe, they would point to the fact that I believed in a secure border. The first candidate I supported for president in 2024 was Tim Scott. But because I supported the Georgia election law, I was a racist. And then I supported Nikki Haley. I'm not sure what excuse they would use to prove that I was a misogynist, but I supported Nikki Haley. I mean, these labels, this woke stuff, this social justice stuff, this DEI garbage, they're still falling back on that. They're still saying that the reason Kamala Harris lost was because a lot of America couldn't get their arms around electing a woman or electing a person of color. Nikki Haley is a woman and a person of color last time I checked, and I was a ardent supporter of hers. But because they're having this debate and saying this is why she lost, and this seems to be the lead reason in their minds why they lost, which would indicate they're going to continue to sprint to the left, they're going to stay in the wilderness for a really, really long time, unless and until they wake up to the fact that the thing that killed them most is social justice. Now, if there's justice, that's it.
Well, listen, when you turn on and you see Al Sharpton, who, if anything, is one of the most divisive personalities to hit the American stage.
Yeah, he's held out as a civil rights leader.
And he's a civil rights leader responsible
vomit.
for riots and deaths, both in Brooklyn and Harlem.
And anti-Semitism and racism.
Right. So
I'd like him to pay his taxes, too, because,
right.
But he doesn't own his suits. That's the important thing.
Jesse, the important thing to learn from this is that if you, Eric, or I didn't pay our taxes, we would be in jail. Even Hunter Biden finally got convicted of tax fraud.
Well, he's going to get a pardon.
And maybe get a pardon, but at least he got a conviction. Whatever happened to Al Sharpton?
Well, I think wasn't he convicted of tax fraud?
I don't think so.
I don't remember.
So the short answer is, Sharpton's out there saying it's all about racism, and it's all about white men not liking black women and black men not liking black women. I mean, give me a break.
Yeah, it's never that you disagree with their policy positions. That can never enter into it.
Yeah. So I want to conclude this segment by asking Jesse this question before we move into other topics. What have we learned about America from this election, Jesse?
What have we learned about America?
Mm-hmm.
Her resiliency, her ability to recognize what's right and what's wrong. At times, we may be fooled. We may not, but we have the ability with our free minds to look through the clutter of manipulated confusion by elites, by candidates, by bad campaigns, and we feel the policies that America can see through that. And you know what? The simplest way that we can as Americans to see that is basically through pocketbook issues. We see every day, maybe the elitists in the north, on the two coasts, don't see it. The Soros of the world, because they don't have to actually hand over their credit card to put to pay for their goods. But we go to the gas pump. We pump our own gas. We see how much more we're paying. We go to the grocery store. We see how much we're paying more than we did 4 years ago. We have to make the decision: do I buy this much food, or do I pay for my son's or my daughter's Little League registration? They vote with their pocketbook, and they know when they're being lied to, whether it's by the legacy media, by social media, or by the candidates themselves. They are the ability to think for themselves, despite the Democrats trying to bring this 1984 Orwellian world to bear here in America.
Eric, what do you think that we've learned, if anything?
Well, I think it's been highlighted, because I've always believed this, that the American electorate is generally a very rational, caring, compassionate, patriotic group of people that take a step back and they say, what's best for my country, what's best for my family, and they vote rationally. I mean, I think, to take what Jesse was saying, I think it was, Abraham Lincoln, you can fool all the people some of the time and some of the people all the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. So yep. I think that's kind of where we are. I mean, Americans are smart. They understand that they should believe their own eyes and not just necessarily the stuff they're being fed. They could see through the media when they're biased. They could see through the lawfare when you weaponize the criminal justice system. They could see the hypocrisy of the left. But most importantly, they understood what the progressive agenda is doing to the country generally and to their families in particular. And they don't like it. And they stood up and they said, cut it out. And God bless them.
We're taking a break. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Please stay with us. We'll be back in a few moments with our final segment of today's show. Thank you.
This is Let the Record Show.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Not everyone is careful with your personal information, which might explain why there's a victim of identity theft every 5 seconds in the U.S. Fortunately, there's LifeLock. LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats to your identity. If your identity is stolen, a U.S.-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year by visiting LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
We off? 30 seconds of carefree bliss. Oof, like wind in your hair carefree. Oh, like using Clorox Disinfecting All-Purpose Cleaner in the home carefree. Yes! Like dog slobbing on the coffee table and cleaning it with Clorox Carefree? He's on a roll now. Spit toothpaste on the faucet. You got it. You got it. Peanut butter on the light switch. Oh, spritz, spritz. Spritz, spritz. Clorox, man. Clean feels good.
Okay, we're back.
Use as directed.
Hey, guys, have you heard of Goldbelly? It's this amazing site where they ship the most iconic, famous foods from restaurants across the country, anywhere, nationwide. I've never found a more perfect gift than food. They ship Chicago deep dish pizza, New York bagels, Maine lobster rolls, and even Ina Garten's famous cakes. So if you're looking for a gift for the food lover in your life, head to goldbelly.com and get 20% off your first order with promo code GIFT.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. With me is Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the county chair of the Suffolk County Republican Party and the vice chair of the state Republican Party. With us is noted commentator, attorney, and essayist Eric Levine. So, getting beyond the discussion about the politics of the election and the realignment of the parties and what we've learned about America from this, we still have to deal with the issue as we go forward in January of a new administration. We have to hope that the country will unite and get behind the new president and the Congress and do its best for America. If we're not united, our enemies will take advantage of us. We're confronted by people on the inside of this country who are more interested in their own partisan or ideological objectives than they are about national unity or the public interest. We are confronted on the outside by a ring of aggressive terrorists and hegemonic demons, whether you're talking about Russia or China or Iran or North Korea or Cuba or Venezuela. These are the problems that we face, in my view. And the large question is, can this new president and this new Congress confront these problems effectively and in national interest? Because the future of America is at stake. I believe, respectfully, if the Democrats had won the presidency and the Senate and the House, we would be pushed back to such a degree that it would be almost an insurmountable obstacle to recover. Now, I read a lot of opinion pieces saying, oh, America will survive regardless. We're resilient. Well, the problem is when you go down a path which is inherently self-destructive, there's only so much you can do to redeem your position. So if you give up energy independence and you make sure all the energy sources are coming from your enemies, that's very, very hard to get. When you have all the production of your medical supplies and your pharmaceutical components from your enemies, that's very, very hard to get back. When you give up on your allies and you get outmaneuvered, so you're in a perpetual state of war, and you don't build up your military and your navy, and you don't have a commitment to the sovereignty of the country and its borders, and you allow an invasion by foreign nationals who have no business being here, except in an orderly, legal way, this is very, very hard to recover from. So I submit all this wonderful, happy talk about it doesn't matter who wins, the United States will be resilient, everything will be fine. I don't agree with that. And by nature, I'm an optimist, and I believe in this country. I'm devoted to this country. But I don't believe that we could have withstood another 4 years of these radical, destructive policies and approaches. Eric.
Well, I mean, we disagree a little bit at the margins. In 1860, when Lincoln was elected and the South seceded and the Civil War broke out, 600,000 Americans were killed. That's more than all Americans that collectively that died in every other war that we ever fought in. And the country recovered. Now, I agree with you that had the Democrats won, we would certainly be in a much more precarious position 4 years from now, and it would be more, the comeback would be more difficult, but I do believe we're resilient. I do think ultimately we would have come back, but why put yourself deeper in a hole than you need to be? In terms of the greatest threat, foreign policy threat facing the country today, I think it's a pretty simple one. It's a complicated one to solve, but I think identifying it's pretty simple. It's the new alliance between and among China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, which is challenging the American-led world order. Under the Biden administration, it was always de-escalation, de-escalation, de-escalation. And the only ones who de-escalated were the United States and its allies, to the benefit of the axis of the tyrants, and they're ascendant and we're back on our heels. We need to reverse that. We need to, once again, project power abroad. We need to have peace through strength, and we need to enforce and reinforce the American-led world order. Domestically, it's debts and deficits. That's really the growing danger here. And you're not going to get debts and deficits under control unless we do something about entitlements. I'm dubious as to whether or not we will do anything about entitlements. Neither party really seems to want to have to deal with them, because that's always been that third rail. But that's really important. We have to rebuild our military. We're in a position now where after inflation, we're cutting back on the military. We need to have a massive infusion of funds into the military and rebuilding it. We need to secure the border, and we need to crush, eviscerate, eliminate the social justice movement, and we need to get diversity, equity, and inclusion out of our schools and out of our businesses. One of the major problems facing the country is we don't have enough people wanting to enlist in the military. We don't meet our enlistment goals. And in large part, that's because if we teach our children that America is a systemically racist country, that America is a inherently evil country, who wants to fight and die for it? Who wants to defend it? So we really need to crush DEI. And of course, we want to go back to the Martin Luther King model of people should be judged by the content of the character, not the color of the skin. America is about equal opportunity, not a guaranteed equal result. America is a capitalist society that rewards entrepreneurship and individual liberties, and not equity, which is the coercive redistribution of wealth. We need to grow the pie. We need to create wealth for all, make the opportunity to create your own personal wealth and live a better life for yourself and your families. And I think those are the challenges that the Trump administration is going to have to overcome. I think it's well situated to overcome many of them. As I said, I'm a little dubious about entitlements. As I said, I'm not sure that either party really wants to deal with those, but that's really good. It's going to have to be dealt with at some point. But I'm very optimistic about where the country is today with Trump as president, Republicans retaking the Senate. And when the show's being taped today on Thursday, November 7th, when we're listening to it on Sunday, I think by then it'll be confirmed that the Republicans have also held the House. and there'll be a lot they can get accomplished.
Jesse.
I agree with both assessments that you've added, especially in the military, our place on the foreign stage. I think that we're going to have a return of peace through strength and carry a big stick, to use those wonderful cliches and wonderful sayings that have come from American leaders. But almost immediately, and I've been asked this question by various news outlets since Election Day, what does a Trump presidency mean for average Americans, New Yorkers, Suffolk County residents? And what I can say is basically what I've heard his administration and our members of Congress, Nick Lalotta and Andrew Garbarino, say to me in their conversations. Number one, first and foremost, on January 20th, he could reverse executive orders that have been placed on by the Biden administration. We can reverse the policies, and I believe he will reverse our policies on making us energy independent, restarting the Keystone Pipeline, allowing drilling on federal lands and war and such.
Get out of the Paris peace. Get out of the Paris Accords.
Absolutely, that one as well. And then again, it'll allow us to become energy independent again, tap into our own resources of oil, natural gas, and that will have an immediate impact. And it's my understanding, and from the oil and gas and the energy industry as a whole, that you need like a 3 to 4 month looking into an advance, knowing that Donald Trump as president is going to be doing that. That can ramp up their operations in anticipation of this. And energy costs, that is along the entire breadth of the economy for anyone, whether you're a small business owner, a manufacturer, or a family at home right there here on Smith Street in Patchogue. It affects everyone. Lower gasoline costs. Let's get gasoline under $2 a gallon. Let's get home heating oil back down to where it was at the Trump era costs. That's going to bring down all the costs along every industry and service that's going to be coming forward, because that affects truckers, manufacturers. It affects the people who are doing their jobs, what we buy at the groceries. The other thing is talks about safety and security. The return of the Trump era border security policies by executive order. Let's get that wall going again. Let's go back to the policies that secured our border and stopped the 21 million illegal, unchecked migrants that have crossed our border. And you know what? I do support. I'm a Hispanic American. I'm a first-generation American here. My father defected from Cuba, came here, raised his family. My mother's Puerto Rican. That makes me Cuba Rican. They all supported people, and you can see it in the Hispanic community. They're a community of faith, family, and probably some of the best entrepreneurs you're going to find in the country. But they all agree in legal, proper immigration. They don't want people jumping the lines. They don't want, in New York, $4.3 billion of our tax dollars being used for free housing, free health care, and for debit cards for illegal migrants, especially those with criminal records. I do support the deportation immediately of any and all illegal migrants that have come forward who have come across this border into our country with criminal records. Let's get them out of there. Here on Long Island, we have an illegal migrant that was arrested for child pornography. Another one that was arrested for an alleged rape that happened on Shelter Island. It hits our streets. It comes to our streets immediately on January 20th. I believe that Americans and New Yorkers and Suffolk County residents will feel the benefit and the immediate change, both in our economy by making us energy independent, and by the restoration of the Trump era border policies that will close that open door, seal it, so that we can make our communities safer and more secure.
Eric.
Yeah, I mean, I would just exclamation point after everything Jesse just said. Although it'd be interesting if you were also Jewish. It would make you Jew Cuba Rican. I mean, how it? Because I know a number of Jews who came from Cuba. They call themselves the Jubans. So with Juba Ricans, I'm not sure how that would. So we can work on that one between now and Sunday. You know, look, the election's over. The governing will begin. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the world between today and January 20th. One of the things that I'm going to be watching is Israel. Donald Trump has told Bibi Netanyahu that he really would like some of the more aggressive Israeli policies to end by January 20th, but he certainly didn't put any limits on what he expects Netanyahu to do, or what he could, or Israel can do. So I think there's a realistic possibility that between now and January 20th, the Israelis will attack the Iranian nuclear facilities. If Harris had won, I don't think they would have been able to do that. I think you're going to see a step up in Israeli attacks on Hezbollah to finish them off. They're going to try and finish off whatever they need to do with Hamas, notwithstanding the Biden administration setting its hair on fire, screaming de-escalation, de-escalation, de-escalation. Of course, there's a threat and a danger of what the Biden administration might want to do in the UN, like what Obama did in his parting shots.
Well, that's interesting. That's interesting. I just want to point something out. You just prompted something in me.
That's why I'm here.
Thank you.
Okay.
So let me point out two things that are very, very dangerous. Number one, in the waning days of the Obama administration, what he did is he reclassified a whole bunch of government workers in the federal bureaucracy from political appointees to civil service, meaning that when Trump went in and took over, and he knows better now because he knows how the game is played. In his first time, he was an outsider coming in. But they reclassified, which made it harder to get rid of these people who had their own agenda and had no intention of fulfilling the directives of the chief executive of the United States, the president of the United States. That was one thing Obama did. He did it in the thousands. The second thing Eric just alluded to, they had a repudiation of Israel at the UN. But there's another danger that I was just reading about, and frankly, I hadn't thought about. Obama and Biden and Harris and Kerry and the Clintons have always had this obsession with globalism. And there's an ability to bind this country with international agreements now, between now and January 20th, which makes certain obligations a matter of law.
He doesn't have the power to do that without Congress. It can maybe be an executive order, but but a president can just reverse it.
Well, hopefully, or you can just walk away from it and say, sue me. But there are certain international agreements that you commit the United States to that you don't need the Congress. And the question is, how binding is that?
Supposedly, look at the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal. Trump, to his credit, walked away from it and put in the maximum pressure policy instead of the appeasement policy of Obama and Biden.
Well, I'm hopeful that you're right. I raised the concern because there are commentators who've raised that issue, and I've read the articles, and I was deeply troubled by that. What I don't want to have is that there's an expression, Jesse and Eric, about you have to deal with the facts on the ground. I don't want them to set up the quicksand now. And you're already talking about the so-called resistance, where they're going to weaponize the governmental power and the legal systems of California and New York against Trump, and his administration and his policies, and try and weigh them down in lawsuits and investigations and prosecutions. You already have that being set up. They're already talking about it, and it's reprehensible. But I also don't want them to reclassify thousands of government workers into civil service so he can't pick and choose his own staff and the people who carry out his agenda, or in contrast will sabotage it. And I certainly don't want to have legal or financial commitments through international agencies that will hamper his ability to have a free hand to do what's right for the country.
I don't see under the Constitution how a single executive can bind a subsequent executive without an act of Congress. I just don't see how it's possible.
Hopefully, you're absolutely right. I will defer to you on that one. I just raised the concern. Thank you for listening to Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, Eric Levine, noted commentator, essayist, and attorney. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. God bless you, and God bless America.
Let the Record Show is on the air.